couple of bits we obviously wanted to touch on, and I touched on it very, very briefly. And one of it's the MVP race that obviously Drake Maye was up for, but he just got pipped to the post by Stafford. I mean, Eddie, I'll come to you first on this because I know this is the MVP race is something that's always close to your heart. What did you make of the decision?
I thought it was, we talked about this when we were and I said that I had this feeling that, people were going to try and get Matt Stafford in, right? Because, there's the story about, the fact that, he potentially was on his way out. I know he announced, at the honors that he's coming back, but there was almost that fairy tale, sort of thing that, Matthew Stafford, MVP, get to the Super Bowl right off into the sunset. So I think there was a lot of hype and build up, to him. But I always thought that, Drake Maye should, get a fair shake in the sense that, I mean, if you look at, the 20, games that, they've played, he's led in most of those games. I think it's like, maybe 17 or so, of those games. And he's led in a lot of those. And he's been very, very situational. And there's something to be said about turning, a franchise, who only won 4 games, in the previous season, to now winning, was it 13, 14 games? And I thought that there was, a good chance that he was going to get it. But what started giving me, a bit of like, you kind of, almost feel like, they're orchestrating something is when you get nominated for the MVP and then you also get nominated for the Offensive Player of the Year as well. That's when you start to think, okay, so there is a good chance that he's not going to be the MVP. And then everyone knew that the offensive player was going to be JSN, right? Because he's had an electric season. But it just felt to me that people just wanted, for sentimental reasons, to give it to Matthew Stafford. And to hear that it was just a vote or so that stopped Drake Maye must be feeling, a little bit. I don't know how Patriots fans are feeling, but I just thought, because it's hard, like to get to be an MVP finalist. You might never get there again. I mean, you look at, a lot of good quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, he got to the Super Bowl, never got back, right? And though he won a couple of MVPs, but you just never know if you're going to be in there because you don't know what's going to happen the next season. This has been a season without, Josh Allen, playing that well, Lamar Jackson playing that well, no Patrick Mahomes, and you expect all of them to come back. So I guess how did you feel about Drake Maye not getting the nod as an MVP?
Yeah, I think that I kind of feel you, Eddie. Like you kind of felt like something like, because the conversation was still like very relevant of like, oh, it feels like, Drake Maye doesn't have this yet in the bag. Whereas like, we're sitting here in New England, he's got all these great stats. Like I think he had one of the highest, if not the highest, pass completion rating. And then like certainly the highest over, certain amount of yardage.
Yeah.
And then, like all things being equal, to your point around coming into, like a new head coach and like, as a second-year player and just like basically like a brand new organization with all the turnover. Yeah, I mean, that's got to count for something. I quite frankly think that he got robbed, but being that the fact that, we're playing in the Super Bowl, it's kind of like, we got other things to worry about, bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. I mean, it's I get that feeling, right? And I'm sure Drake Maye will probably not care. He's like, our Super Bowl finalist, MVP finalist. I'm in the Super Bowl, so that's the most important thing. If I win that, then, it's like, and I think for him being a second-year quarterback, it probably sets the foundation, right? Because you get a Super Bowl and then you win it in your second year. Now it's like, okay, right? You're now on that Hall of Fame trajectory, right? You're now like, okay, who are we comparing him with in their second season in the Super Bowl? I mean, in the NFL, get to the Super Bowl, and all of that. So I think, and he's 23. I just cannot, like, when I kind of think of his age, I'm just like, he's freaking 23.
It's wild.
Yeah.
He's such an interesting guy too, right? Because like you really get the sense that like he just cares about football, right? Like he just wants to be like play football and just happens to be like really, really good at it and like really good at getting other people around him to be good as well. And like maybe this is just a reason for him to keep a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. In years 3 and beyond. So for that, maybe it's a good thing that he didn't get it.
I'm going to have a bit of a hot take here because I think it's all complete nonsense and a complete waste of time. Right. I've never understood the need for individual awards in a team sport. Right. When you have the MVP being a player, you can guarantee if you had asked Stafford, what would you rather be in the Super Bowl or being an MVP or be the MVP? He'd take the Super Bowl every day of the week. So I almost feel like, well, what's the point? It's a team sport. You play as a team, you win as a team. Yes, Hall of Fame, absolutely. Your best player should go into Hall of Fame. But I just think this constant need for picking a best player across all the in certain positions in a team sport is nonsense. It's the same in our sport with the whole like Ballon d'Or and all this kind of stuff. In our football, I just think it's a waste of time. And look at the best example is defensive player of the year is Myles Garrett. Of course, he got all those sacks, but what have the Browns done this season?
Yeah.
Right, so he's
got a bag full of money, like, I tell you that.
He's won it, for getting paid and basically slapping quarterbacks in the face all season, which is fantastic. He's a brilliant player. He's a brilliant player, and he is rightfully, I guess, the defensive player of the year. But he's done it in a really poor team. I'm sure he would swap he'd easily swap the place for. Would he have given up 5 or 6 of those sacks that he got this season to play for either the Seahawks or the Patriots on Sunday? Of course he would. Right. So my hot take is, scrap the whole thing. It's never going to happen, but scrap the whole MVP stuff. I think it's nonsense.
Yeah, I think Drake Maye's got a shot at being Super Bowl MVP. Yeah. So to the extent he gets it, I think that sounds way better.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well, whoever wins the Super Bowl, the quarterback's the MVP anyway. It's just that's how it works.
Yeah. Although in the when the Patriots played the Seahawks and Malcolm Butler got the interception, was he the MVP or was Tom Brady?
I think it was Tom Brady.
That just proves the point of it always goes to the quarterback because he was absolutely the MVP of that.
He was pivotal. But there is the recipe for the quarterback not winning, the MVP. So usually if it's a low scoring game, right, where they earn lots of yards, and then maybe there is one player that had the most explosive play, like when what's his name, Elderman, when he won the MVP, with the Patriots, it was because he made, 1 or 2 plays in that Super Bowl. So usually when it's not a high scoring game and then one player makes one play that stands out, then everybody kind of gives him the MVP. But if there's a high scoring game, it's the quarterback. The quarterback is just going to take it. Any game that they score more than 17, points, quarterback is going to get the MVP, of the Super Bowl.